Well, hello and welcome to the Smells Like Money podcast. Join me, Suzan Taylor, the DooDoo Diva, as I interview guests who are making an impact on how we manage and operate systems for conveying and treating wastewater. As a veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry, each week I'll be bringing you industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Join me each week as I speak with representatives of organizations that are utilizing disruptive or new technologies and methods, and executives who are excited to share how to be successful and sustainable in our vital industry. So whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, in treatment or trenchless, gain tips on training and retaining great talent, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Ready? Let's dive right in. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast. I am continuing my visit today with Chad Kalland, CEO of Vectra Environmental, and they are a cleaning, hydroblasting, remediation, hydroexcavation, oil field, industrial process, wastewater, you name it. You can find more information about them on their website. But Chad I met him through LinkedIn, which, as you know, I'm a great proponent of how wonderful LinkedIn to meet really interesting, wonderful people. Chad is one of those folks, and I have been following his posts on leadership. And so I wanted to bring him on the show and continue our dialogue from last time about some posts that he made that I found very interesting and thought-provoking. And I think there's something of great value to bring to our industry. Really, it can really apply to anybody, whether they're a contractor, a manufacturer, a municipal utility and agency. It's really just all about people and leadership. And what I loved that Chad really kind of admitted in this post is that he has spent a tremendous amount of time bettering himself in studying leadership and how to be a better leader. And a lot of us have done this. But one thing that he recognized that really intrigued me was he wasn't afraid to admit that in his search for all this information and to better himself, he realized that he had been spending more time on self-leadership instead of things that were important or better for his team. And so, Chad, with that said, I want to really open that up as to when that epiphany happened and what you decided to do to shift.
Yeah. Thank you, Suzanne. It's a pleasure to join you again. So I was talking to one of my mentors about it at the time and kind of sharing my struggles and feeling like I was doing a lot of work on myself, but it wasn't really showing up. I didn't feel like I was really being an effective leader. I was learning how to, and it just I wasn't seeing the results. Her words to me were, if you want your team to trust your leadership, start by helping them to trust themselves, right? And it really got me to understand that, I'd been focusing inward rather than focusing outward. And it really changed my perspective. And it made me realize that leadership is a choice, but it's not my choice, right? It's the people who are following me. They choose who they follow. So if I wanted to be a leader, my job was to make them the best they could be. And then if I could do that for them, then they would follow me.
Wow. One of the things that I loved in one of your posts was, and I'm going to let you answer. Yeah. So, Chad, what is it that you do exactly?
Yeah, well, I like to say that I open doors and I raise ceilings. And by that, I believe that is, giving opportunities, open the doors for people to have opportunities that they might not otherwise have,
Mm.
and then raise their ceilings by challenging them to go farther. Give them assignments that push their skills. Ask more of them. Ask them to do beyond what they've done in the past. To try to get them to achieve more than they've achieved in the past. And I think that, you know, I know for certain that that approach has been vital to the success at Vecta. I mean, we hire people that may have hit a ceiling at one of our larger, competitors. Maybe they can't advance past a certain job title because they might not have the degree, or they might not have, whatever it is. They don't fit the bill for that organization. We've been able to bring people like that in, challenge them to, okay, you're a supervisor at this company. We want you to be an account manager, and give them the tools to achieve that, set them up for success. And we've been able to keep a core group of people together by doing just that, by raising their ceiling for them and letting them take on bigger roles.
I love that, raising the ceiling. So something you mentioned about you just alluded to that about providing the tools. What did you mean by find roadblocks?
Yeah. So, early in my career, I couldn't pinpoint it at the time, but I didn't believe in myself. Right. And, because I had told myself the story enough, or people had told me the story enough, that this is what I was supposed to do. And this is as far as I was supposed to go. So oftentimes the roadblock is internal. Right. And those can be hard to find. But if you can help someone identify what their self-limiting beliefs are, then you can help them find ways beyond those. Right. Sometimes the roadblock is external. Right. Sometimes the roadblock is this person isn't especially proficient with technology. So then you identify that that's their roadblock, and you give them tools to learn the technology that they need to be successful. So sometimes the roadblocks are external and sometimes they're internal. The key is working with them close enough to figure out what they are.
Wow. And when you talk about giving feedback, what do you mean by that?
A lot of times, feedback from a manager level, sometimes feedback just means being called into the office when you do something wrong.
Right.
And that's not constructive feedback. Chances are I know I messed up, and then someone telling me again that I messed up isn't constructive feedback.
Right.
Feedback it's in the moment. I saw you do this went well. This is an area where you could improve, and this is why it would make a difference. Constructive feedback like that, giving credit when something goes right, and then really digging in and understanding when something goes wrong and what could be done different, to me is good feedback. Not just being called in when something goes wrong. Positive feedback, I think is key to getting people to go farther. A lot of times the negative feedback really just shuts people down, and you have to address the negative. I'm not saying we don't address the negative, right? But there's a way to address it in a way that it becomes a learning experience, not just a punitive discussion.
Right. I was going to ask, how do you turn, there are going to be difficult situations, but it sounds like you have found a formula for when something does go wrong, instead of playing the blame game.
Oh yeah.
It's all right. Well then, okay, this went wrong. So how are you and I going to work together to fix it and put things in place so that it doesn't happen again, or that somebody else in the organization doesn't fall into the same trap you did because they weren't aware. Yeah. And so that leads me to, I thought this was an interesting title, was The Ceiling of Victimhood.
Oh yeah.
You hear that topic of, being the victim. You hear it a lot in self-help books and other types of, areas of self-discovery and self-awareness. And I want to talk to you about what you meant by that, and how it can be applied in business.
Yeah. So for me, it's easy to spot, especially when I'm in it, right? When I'm bumping up against the ceiling of victimhood, I can't do something because it's someone else's fault, right? I can't do something because of this. I can't do something especially because of this other person, or those type of stories. When I start telling those stories, then I know I'm in it. All right.
Right.
And it really goes back to um, just kind of limiting myself based on external events and conditions. Um, if I'm constantly blaming someone or something for why I haven't been successful, why this project didn't turn out right, chances are I'm not going to do the work to fix it, right? To change the conditions, because all the conditions are someone else's problem, right? They're someone else's fault. If I can remove the victimhood aspect of it, really looked at what is my role in this, right? What part did I contribute? And then, I may or may not be successful beyond that point, but I've done all I can because I've changed the parts of that I'm responsible for.
Wow. So how can we as individuals, you were saying that if you spot someone in your organization,
Yeah.
it seems like you've got a lot of great self-awareness, but other people may not.
Yeah.
And so as a leader who has developed that sense of awareness, how do you help those that to see what they're doing when you can see that they're in that trap of what you were calling they've hit that ceiling of victimhood, but they're not aware of it. How do you jump in and work with that?
So there's a four-step process that I kind of use, and the acronym for it is LIFT, right? It's
LIFT. Okay.
It's listen, really listen to the other person, listen to what they say, listen for what we talked about, those self-limiting beliefs. If those come up, really understand what that person's going through and what their challenges are, right? Then the I is identify the problem. And by identifying the problem, you're really focusing on the things that are in your control, right? What is it about this that affects me personally, or affects this person personally? So identify the problem. The F is focus on solutions. And by focusing on solutions, that is only the things that are in my ability to control. So by focusing on solutions, I can't worry about what my coworkers are doing or saying. I can't worry about just the things that I have control over. Focus on those solutions. And then the T is take action. And that's coming up with a plan of action, smart goals, and kind of concrete steps I can take to make progress along, to fix the problem. And then a set of, a system of accountability, like who am I going to check back in with around this? Who's going to work with me on this to make sure we're taking these steps?
Have you used this it sounds like you've been using this pretty effectively within your organization.
I use it personally too. I do it all the time in my personal life when I'm kind of bumping up against something, and really just kind of focus on, so what is it about this that's the problem? And but it does, it works. You can use the process for conflict. If two people are in conflict, you kind of identify what the conflict is. If one person is struggling with a project at work, you can use it for that. It has applications anywhere that someone's struggling. I've found it's pretty versatile process.
Right. Well, now that you bring that up, that kind of segues. I didn't have this on the list of questions, but it segues in. As a leader, when conflicts come up and you've got two very, very valuable employees, but they are at odds with each other, and it is creating disruption in the workplace. It's impacting everybody else because there might be some toxicity coming up because of this. What are some of the things that you've been successfully able to utilize to resolve that, to turn destructive conflict into productive conflict?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that my business partner and I we start with get everybody in the same room.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of conflict, I have my story and you have yours. And if there's someone kind of mediating, they're going to hear my story, they're going to hear yours, and they've got to make up their mind what's true and what's not. If we can get everyone in the room together and first agree on what the facts of the conflict are, that's the first step. Because a lot of times that's the toughest one, right? Because a lot of the times conflict is really about perception, and the facts of the matter. If we can get past perceptions and get to the facts of the matter, sometimes the conflict will go away on its own because, oh, I didn't know you saw it that way. This is how I saw it, you know. So that's the first part, really getting everyone in the room and try to get down to the basic facts of it. And then you can look at, and how did it impact each person? And then, okay, this is what the organization needs from this conflict. What does each individual need? And then try to, and sometimes you can meet those needs and sometimes you can't. But you do your best, you know, as a leader, you do your best in that situation to meet the individual needs. And then you're not going to find, unfortunately, not all these end up in a nice, pretty bow. But you come to a solution where you can kind of all agree that this is the best workable solution. And when we leave this room, this is what we're going to all walk out holding, you know. And if you can get everyone walking out holding the same message, you know, a lot of at least the heat from the conflict goes away.
Right. Right. Well, thank you for sharing this, because I mean, it's, you know, conflict is inevitable.
Absolutely.
Conflict is inevitable. It's what we do with it that really matters at the end of the day. And it's also that thing where if you start seeing that you have a lot of people, and I've run into this, where you've got one department, especially in a larger organization, maybe like yours, where you see there seems to be a high amount of turnover in one particular department. Well, could it be the people you're hiring, or could it be the person that they have to report to on a, you know, a supervisor? What's going on here to create that kind of strife within an organization? And so, because, you know, your posts are wonderful. And again, for those who didn't tune in last time, I really recommend, if you're not connected with Chad, to look him up on LinkedIn, read some of his posts on leadership. There is just a wealth of really, I mean, amazing insight for businesses of all kinds. I just really love what he has to say. But Chad, could you, what I'd really like to leave with is, give us your top 3 things that have really worked for you of late, that have helped you to find, train, and then really the most important thing, retain good talent.
Yeah. And you know, as I'm sure you and all of your listeners know, that's a challenge for every business right now, right?
The great resignation. Yeah.
Great. Yep. Yep. You know, finding people, what works for us is really reaching out to the people in our organization, and asking for, who in your life would you want to work beside, right? Who in your life do you think would make a good team member? And you know, it's all of our, you know, most of our talent comes in that way, because our employees have been in the industry for a long time. They've worked, you know, we've only been in business 11 years. So they were working in the industry before Vecta was even an entity. So there are people in the industry that they know and trust. And bringing in people that way, we've been able to find really talented people who are long-term professionals who take their job seriously. So we've been very fortunate in that aspect. But so to find people, we look to the people who we already have, to retain them. You know, I think it goes back to the conversation we had previously about, you know, really investing in your people on a personal level, and making them feel like they're part of something more than just a paycheck. To give them, you know, something about the organization that they can find meaning in, is helpful. You know, it definitely, we can't keep everybody, and some people are still going to leave for a better opportunity, and we encourage that. If you think you have a better opportunity, go go chase it. And if it doesn't work out, please come back.
Mm,
But we want to give them something that we want them to feel a part of something more than just a paycheck.
right.
Then what was the third one? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, just anything that you could, well, you kind of followed it is training.
Yeah,
Training is one thing.
yeah,
What do you do? Because obviously training someone so that they don't make mistakes and cost
yeah.
you money is equally important to
Yeah,
finding them.
absolutely. And the work we do is dangerous, so we
Yes, it
want to make
is.
sure, so we want to make sure that when they go out there, they're not going to hurt themselves, their co-workers, or the customer's equipment. So we want to send them out, knowing that they're going to operate in a safe manner. And that's really, when it comes to mentorship, we try to put our new hires with someone who's, if it is someone who's new to the industry, put them with someone who's accomplished, that has a history of working safely, believes in the safe work culture, and then let those people in our organization mentor the new hires, and show them kind of how we expect them to work, and conduct themselves. And it's been it's worked for us so far. Knock on wood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent, excellent. Well, again, Chad, thank you for spending so much time and giving up time from your busy day.
Yeah.
And, when we talk about leadership, one thing I wanted to ask you, this is just as an aside, because you do post a lot of content on social media about leadership. You're really, you're becoming kind of an influencer within that arena. What would you say has been the value of social media in you attracting like-minded people for your business? I've met with other executives that had said that, their content on social media has really made a difference in them finding quality people. Would you agree that that has helped you in the virtual space for your recognition?
Yeah, it certainly helped me connect with people in the industry. And I didn't set out to do that. I set out to really just kind of share some thoughts. When I started posting on LinkedIn, I don't know that I had an intention really in mind other than to share some thoughts. But it's certainly, I tell everybody who's in a position of leadership, share your thoughts on LinkedIn, because it makes us all better. Right. I read a lot of LinkedIn posts, because it's always nice to hear someone else's perspective. And I've met a ton of great people and made a lot of really good relationships through their response to my posts and my response to some of theirs.
Yeah, we're all getting interconnected. The world is getting smaller, and I think that's a good thing. That's a
Absolutely.
good thing. Yeah. I think if it hadn't been for platforms like this during the pandemic, I think we all would have, or we all would have lost our businesses because we had to shift gears. And thank goodness for Zoom. Who would have ever imagined, even like 5 years ago, that we could not live with this thing that you and I are doing right now?
Absolutely.
I think thinking back then, we never imagined. We're probably old enough to remember the Jetsons.
Right.
And remember Jane Jetson had to put on her face mask, or, we were watching that as kids, seeing, oh, that'll be so cool that we'll have TV, like telephone, television or viewable video telephone calls. And we thought, oh no, that's never going to happen in our lifetime. And here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are. It's a good thing. It's a really good thing. Hey, it led me to you and you sharing your wisdom here today. So again, thank you for being on the show. The correct information and all of Chad's contact information will be in the show notes at the bottom of the podcast and the video cast. Really encourage you to connect with him and follow these posts. You're going to get a lot out of it. And so again, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep it flowing. Thanks so much for joining me, the DooDoo Diva, on this week's episode of Smells Like Money. What stood out to you this week? Share your takeaways by leaving me a review. You can find out more about the new technologies, creating sustainable solutions, and insights on how to succeed in our vital industry by subscribing to the show. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in wastewater infrastructure, treatment, or trenchless, you've got it all right here at Smells Like Money. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest for the show, book a quick chat with me by visiting calendly.com/the2it group/B-A-podcast-guest, or simply click the link in the show notes below. Until next week, a big shout out to all my industry friends and those who will be. You are my superheroes. Thanks for tuning in, keeping it flowing, and we'll see you all next week.